Susanna Keilman, who is running for Legislative District 8, Position 2. And we'll go ahead and let you start with opening comments, if you like.
First, I want to say thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Mom will keep me on track with that. Welcome, everyone. I'm Susanna Keilman. I'm your candidate for state representative in the 28th District. I'm running against the incumbent who is not here tonight, but I would like to thank each of you for just taking the time out of your busy day to come and see what your candidate is. And I'm from this local area, and actually, if you follow Bridgeport all the way down, right outside of McCord Air Force Base is the area that I grew up. And if you know that area, you know that it's not the best area, but my mom, she was a single mom at the time, raising 3 young girls. And we were on welfare, we lived in low-income housing, and the area that we lived in was a high-crime area. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running, because I want to protect our most vulnerable populations and show vulnerable populations, one, that because you're on government assistance doesn't mean that has to be your whole life, and that there is a pathway out of that that leads to much better things, and I'm living proof of that. And I also couldn't have done it without my dad, who's also sitting in the back row. He is a World War II veteran and Korean War veteran, and his birthday is next Tuesday. He will be 96. Thank you for that. I'm sure he appreciates that. But the harder that my mom worked, the better our lives became, and we eventually got off of welfare, and we worked our way up into becoming a middle-class family. And that's when we really realized, wow, government is not efficient. And you don't know that when you're depending on the government for assistance, for food, water, and shelter. And when you reach the working class, or when you reach the middle class, you start to look at all the things that aren't working for everyone. And you start to see where the disparities come from. So my goal as your representative is to make sure that we have a balanced approach. We are a purple district in the 28th District. So there actually are more Democrats than there are Republicans. And I'm not here to only represent Republicans when I'm elected. I'm here to represent everyone. We have to have balance. And I think that we all have seen that perils come when the pendulum swings far in any direction. So that's far on the right and far on the left. And my goal is to keep things balanced, literally right in the middle. And I can only do that by listening to you, what you guys want me to do, and you guys holding me accountable. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Regardless of what your political party is, I'm really hoping to earn your support, and I'm here to listen. So please feel free to grab me after this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's go ahead and start with our questions. The first one is regarding the gas tax. By governor request and passed by the legislature on a party line vote in 2021, the Climate Commitment Act became law. Part of that law includes a greenhouse gas emissions cap and investment program that will start January 1, 2023. Based on the Department of Ecology's projections released this summer, Washington State's new tax on CO2 emissions will add about 46.6 cents to the cost of a gallon of gas in 2023. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, Washington residents already pay about 70 cents per gallon more than the average price in the United States. What is your position on the law, and what action needs to be taken, if any?
Thank you for that question. So first, let's address the date that it takes effect, January 1st, which is conveniently after the elections. That was definitely strategic on our current government's part. So I am opposed to this. I think we already have enough taxes in this state. We're actually trending to have probably the highest gas tax in the nation. And if you look at all of the other taxes that we have or that impose on transportation, it's really not equitable. And as much as I love that word equitable, and I do want it to be fair for everyone, let's actually make sure that it's equitable. If we are going to impose a tax, let's actually make sure that the tax that we're imposing has true need and that there's accountability and transparency of existing resources and where current taxes are going. We have public transportation. Because of our current state of emergency, public transportation has actually been used for shelter for the homeless population, which is fine. However, if we truly are in a state of emergency, they're not sanitizing the transportation after that is being used as shelter before people that actually pay for that transportation to use it to go back and forth to work. So a lot of people actually don't feel safe and they don't feel like public transportation is hygienic to use. There's other ways that we can support our transportation laws. And again, I don't think that adding a new tax is going to solve it. Throwing more money at a problem is never going to solve it if you don't look at where the current money is going. Thank you.
The next question is regarding school choice. The U.S. Supreme Court, as a result of its June 2022 landmark decision, Carson et al. Versus Macon, has now made it clear that no state may prevent families from using a generally available public tuition assistance program to send their children to private religious schools. Lawmakers in Washington state are now free to debate choice bills like the 4 bills introduced during the 2022 legislative session. These bills would have given families who want options up to $10,000 to send their children to private school. If the state legislature were to pass these bills, private religious schools must be included in the list of possible options families have to educate their children. What is your position on this issue and the legislation introduced in 2022?
Sure, so I actually support parents wherever they want to send their children. And I think if you are spending money into a school system that is failing you, one, we need to actually make sure that we're holding our school systems accountable because those schools are not going to stop being funded. So it's actually really a shame that parents have to pull their kids out of the public school system. I'm a product of the public school system where math, language arts, and science was required in order for me to graduate. And now those standards are no longer in place. So we are doing that in the name of equity, but we're actually setting our kids up for failure in the real world when they don't have those basic skills. So if we're not going to implement trade schools at a younger age or give parents the options to where parents want to send their children for a better education, we're really not doing our children justice at all. So I do support parents' rights. I support it as an investment. You are investing in your children's future. If you look at it this way, the people that are in school now, the students that are in school now are going to be making decisions that impact us when we are in retirement. So we do have to invest in the children now. We should not have the answer that just because my kid is in private school means that I'm not going to be impacted by this law. Everyone is impacted by public education, and I do support our parents' decisions.
Thank you. The next one is also regarding public education. Children are returning to the classroom, but there is no dispute that the COVID lockdown has set our children back in their education, and math and reading skills have declined. Further, there is a significant percent of children that have not returned to the public classroom for reasons unknown to the schools and Office of Public Instruction. What do you believe needs to change to improve our public education and improve children's test scores?
Sure, so I kind of touched on it in my previous answer, and it really starts with accountability and transparency of where your current taxes are going in the public school system. I've been in business development, and any time that there's an investment in a monetary source, you look at the key performance indicators, or you look at performance measurements. And in this case, many of you in this room have talked to me, and we've had conversations about test scores. We've had conversations about what your kids are learning in school. It have nothing to do with science and math and basic life skills that students should be learning to have a successful career after school. So I do think we need to incorporate trade schools. I think we need to incorporate parents' choice. But again, this needs to incorporate accountability and transparency of our current investment in our kids' schools. There is no reason why we should be funding or throwing money at a failing education system.
Thank you. Next question is regarding expanding agency powers. Governor Inslee has taken several actions in recent years to direct his agencies, especially the Department of Ecology and the Building Council, to adopt rules to implement his environmental goals. Many impacted stakeholders view this aggressive rulemaking action to be a legislative responsibility and not within the powers of a non-elected body. What are your views on this issue, and if elected, what actions will you take to return decision-making to the legislature?
Yes, so I was actually reading on the way over here that Governor Inslee has finally decided to end the state of emergency as of October 31st, which is Halloween. So whether he does it or not might be a trick or treat. So there's my pun for that. But state of emergency and government powers do need to be specified. Blanket policies never work. State of emergency for Mount Rainier erupting versus a COVID emergency is currently being treated the same without the say of the people. The incumbent has voted for many things that actually disregard your voice. I have a statistic on the fact that he's only voted against the party 17 times. So that to me doesn't show that he is a representative of the people. It shows that he is a representative of the party. For Governor Inslee specifically, again, government powers need to be specified, and they need to be limited. They need to be reevaluated with the say of the people, always.
Thank you. The next question is regarding police reform. The Puget Sound Auto Theft Task Force officers place the blame for the dramatic increase in auto thefts on two pieces of legislation, which is preventing them from doing their job. The first severely restricts police ability to pursue the criminal. The second law prevents officers from talking to suspected criminals that are juveniles without an attorney present. As a result, it's believed that the gangs are hiring minors to commit crimes. Do you believe that their assessment is accurate? And if so, what will you do to correct this problem if elected?
Yes, their assessment is accurate. Based on your concerns that you've shared with me, and we've knocked on over 30,000 doors, the biggest concern that you all have shared with me is that public safety and crime is your biggest concern. And after I got that information, I went out and I sought the endorsement of the Washington Council of Police and Sheriffs. I only sought that endorsement because it was based on the concern that you shared with me. I've done a ride-along with all of the cities within the 28th district. I have seen this happen. They are taking advantage. They are doing it again in the name of equity, and it's working against our public safety. Many of you have also shared with me your own personal stories of witnessing full carts of groceries come out of Fred Meyer's in University Place. We've seen the headlines on the News Tribune stating the crime within the multiple cities within the 28th district. I can personally attest to watching police officers arrest a criminal with stolen weapons, drugs, a stolen vehicle, and then they literally had to take the handcuffs off and let that criminal go back into the night. 4 hours later, that same criminal was arrested again for the same crime. That is not effective policy. I do not support it, and once I'm elected, I will rescind anything that defunds our police. Even if they translate defund to reallocation of funds, we will ensure that our police are funded, that their morale is high, and that their families are supported.
Thank you. The next question is regarding Washington's long-term care. One of the state's actuary and the research organization Washington Policy Center find that the Washington Cares Long-Term Care Act is and will continue to be insolvent by at least $15 billion unless the mandatory payroll tax is increased substantially. Further, the benefit allowed under the law is $36,500, which is well understood to be an amount inadequate for any long-term care for more than a few months. The legislature placed a constitutional amendment on the ballot to create additional funding for the program. It failed 54 to 46%. The only action last session by the legislature was to create more exemptions to the mandatory tax and delay the tax for a year. This issue must be addressed in the coming session. What do you propose for a solution to the long-term health care program?
I love this question because I've been in healthcare for over 22 years. Long-term care is extremely important. It is needed. It's not only needed, I look at my parents when I think about this because I've never trusted the government in healthcare. It's very rare that I trust the government for anything, but specifically in healthcare. And I've always known that I was going to be the long-term caretaker for my parents. But at the same time, and don't worry mom and dad, I'm still going to take care of you, I want to improve Medicare. We already have Medicare. So why are we taxing when we already have programs that can be improved? Medicare, and part of your job as a state representative is to work with the other branches of the government. So So we can work to improve Medicare to have that include long-term care. The $36,000 on the return, have you seen your medical bills? Do you know what your co-pays are? Do you know what you pay for prescriptions? $36,000 is not a lot of money, and administrative costs go up every single year. And I know that because papers come across my desk with bills and invoices that are 10% more on a quarterly basis. So $36,000 is not a lot. There's already talks and amendments of raising that amount of money, showing that before it's even implemented, it's not going to be effective. So again, I would suggest as a solution, we improve Medicare and have Medicare include measurements for key performance indicators and quality care that's not included in long-term care. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question regarding capital gains. The state Supreme Court has agreed to a direct review of the lower court's decision declaring that the legislature acted illegally in passing the capital gains tax. The lower court stated that the application of the capital gains tax meets the definition of an income tax, which is restricted by the Constitution. This decision is expected before the legislature convenes in 2023. What is your position on the current capital gains tax, and what legislative action, if any, is needed on this issue?
I will not support capital gains tax, and if I'm elected, I will do everything in my power to prevent capital gains tax from being implemented. And that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you. This is regarding housing. Much has been done at the state and local level to improve housing for the low income and remove the homeless from the streets. Do you believe more needs to be done? Also, how do we assure that the middle class doesn't get squeezed out of the marketplace in the process?
That's a great question. So again, I'm going to pull in from my healthcare background. So Washington State provided, I think it was $1.15 billion in uncompensated healthcare. And so uncompensated healthcare means care for people that have not bought into the insurance system, and we all had the Affordable Care Act where we had to get insurance, and anytime you have uncompensated care at $1.15 billion, that's just automatic proof that the Affordable Care Act is not working. And people in our state are not getting the care that they need. The emergency room, I was a medic in the emergency room, and the emergency room is often used as a dumping ground for everything because we lack the government resources to take care of the homeless. And when we look at the homeless, we have to break down that population. Who is the homeless population? We have 92,000 veterans in Pierce County. There's a lot of veterans that are in our homeless population that should not be there. There's drug addicts, there's mentally ill. We have Western State Hospital right here in our backyard. When you think about the resources that we already have and then you break down the homeless population, that's already proof that the current government-ran program is not effective. So first, again, take accountability for that. And then second, I am endorsed by the Master Builders Association. I would do my best to reduce and restrict the permitting process because that is strenuous and it adds cost to middle-class families.
Thank you. Next question is regarding workplace injuries. Injuries in the workplace caused by repetitive motion, such as a grocery clerk scanning the price of products, is regulated by the federal government, and our state Labor and Industries implements this regulation. These regulations are known as Ergonomics. Organized labor pushed a bill last session to impose heavier regulation at the state level and increase the compensation of workers' comp to employees. Businesses, especially small businesses, oppose the state exceeding an already stringent federal rule. The bill passed the House on a party line vote and failed to be brought to a vote on the Senate floor in the waning days of session. Well, what's your view of the issue, and if elected, how will you vote if this issue is brought back in the 2023 session?
So I've talked to multiple independent business owners and multiple small business owners, and no owner or business manager or business entrepreneur wants to be the cause or wants to be the source for any workplace injury. And there's a union phrase out there, which I actually agree with, that says an injury to one is an injury to all. And coming again from a healthcare background, preventative medicine, preventative ergonomics, preventative practices should be implemented so that way we are preventing these injuries in the first place. That the ergonomics bill penalizes the employers for the jobs that many of us have instead of incentivizes them to actually solve proper ergonomics. And ergonomics is just the proper anatomical way of doing things in a repetitive motion. So let's teach that and stop penalizing the people that are giving us jobs right here in the 28th district.
Thank you. This is regarding the budget. Are you familiar with the most recent state's forecast by the Economic Forecast Council? If so, what is the projected surplus or deficit at this time? How does the legislature need to address the budget next session?
So I'm slightly familiar with it. The numbers, depending on the source, are not consistent. But I will say that we did have a $15 billion surplus. $15 billion. And we decided to increase your taxes anyways. So regardless of what the surplus is or where the revenue sources are coming from, anytime you have a legislative team or local government that is increasing your taxes when there's already a surplus, to me that's an automatic, I'm out, I'm not voting the same way again. All of you are smart people in here, so I trust that you guys will make the right decision.
Thank you. That's the end of our questions, Susanna. I'm going to go and give you 3 minutes for closing comments.
Well, thank you, everyone. I don't want to monopolize your time, so I'll say just a few more words about just my stance on a couple of broad issues. For abortion, I know that's one of the topics that people are either scared to address or don't know how to address. Again, I've been in healthcare for a very, very long time. I also advocate for an organization called Freedom Sisters, which provides an uncensored platform for women that have survived sexual assault. I sit on the board for the Seattle chapter of Women in Bioscience. I recently accepted a board position on the Korean American Freedom Alliance. Everyone has an opinion about abortion. Regardless of what your personal belief is, and as a representative who's going to represent all people, we already have legislation that protects a woman's right to abortion, and that was done with the input by the people. So if that topic is addressed again, it will be done with the input of the people. My personal belief will have nothing to do with it, and that will be for all matters that you bring to me. I will always seek out what is important to you. I will always listen to you, and I will always do what's best for our district. I have morals, I have ethics. The incumbent is also a first responder, and because of his policies, first responders are now delayed responders. We cannot afford to have delayed responders in cases of emergency. I will always put your needs before any policy. Thank you.
Susanna, once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. We have a 10-minute break. If you can stick around and meet the audience, I'm sure that they would love to chat with you. So 10 minutes and we'll resume again. Okay? Thank you.